Here on Aussie Cousins Wrestling Show, we wanted to take a deep dive into one of the worst of WWE's tropes, the Schmoz Finish. We're not going to worry about interference finishes, but what we are looking at are the DQs, countouts, and no contests of the universe. Are they a thing of the past? Or are they slowly starting to come back into the weekly viewing? If you love this kind of Aussie analysis to your WWE content, let's try and get this one up to 50 likes and subscribe to Aussie Cousins Wrestling for more. I'm Chris Apples, and this is our deep dive into whether the return of the Schmoz is happening in the WWE. Paul Triple H Levesque took over the booking of the WWE for the first time in July 2022 after the previous owner, who we won't mention by name, resigned in disgrace. In the lead up to the change in charge, the product had its exciting moments, but there was so much of the show you couldn't care less about because you weren't made to care. Why would you bother investing in a match that is not going to have a finish and then not even have a decent payoff after it? So let's first take a look at the numbers specifically relating to Raw and Smackdown. From the start of the year in 2022 until the last show with any semblance of control from the previous regime, the 22nd of July edition of Smackdown, we have counted 58 shows occurring with 328 matches. Of those matches, 45 of them ended in disqualifications, countouts, or no contest finishes. This is 14% of all matches during this part of the year headed towards a Schmoz finish. But it's not just the number of matches that meant nothing, it's the type of finishes themselves that could be problematic. There were a number of screwy finishes in the feud between Finn Balor and Damian Priest. I wonder if we've seen them fighting together since, as the Judgment Day started to make their presence felt. On the 15th of July episode of Smackdown, one of the 4 matches was a disqualification, that being the nothing match between Madcap Moss and Austin Theory. On the 18th of July edition of Raw, there was a ridiculous 3 of the 7 matches that ended in a dissatisfactory manner, and one of the worst parts of the tropes reared its ugly head. Angelo Dawkins and Omos wrestled to a 1 minute and 20-second DQ when MVP attacked Angelo Dawkins. This led to an impromptu match between the Street Profits versus MVP and Omos, and this led to a 4 minute 50-second disqualification. If you're a fan in attendance on that night, why even bother caring about what's in front of you when these 2 ridiculous matches ended in the same way? But there was still one more to go, and it's our friend from the previous Raw, Theory, as he had previously had his first name taken away, was involved in a count-out finish with AJ Styles that went over 11 minutes. And then a Theory match made this list in the 22nd of July 2022 show, where there wasn't enough time to change the plans from the Creative Control changeover, as he teamed up with the Usos for a 17-minute DQ finish against Madcap Moss and the Street Profits. What a strange set of teams they were. Triple H's first main show in charge came on the 25th of July edition of Raw and had one of the 6 matches end in a DQ, which just happened to be the first match of the night featuring, you guessed it, Theory. A week later, and the only time for the rest of the year where there were multiple bad finishes, and they just happened to be both of the women's matches on the night. Alexa Bliss and Asuka went to a no contest, and so did the Bianca Belair and Io Sky match. But for the rest of the year, Paul Levesque steered clear of those kinds of finishes for the most part, and only recorded 14 out of 245 matches from 45 shows not having a definitive winner. This is a staggering drop down to just 6% of matches ending in such a manner. Less than half of what it was in the preceding 7.5 months before he took over the booking. So that sets the stage for what we need to compare it to in the last year, the start of 2024, and folks would start to worry about whether these kinds of finishes were coming back into the WWE. 5 shows in a row with a bad finish, mainly involving the lead up to the Fatal 4-Way match at the Royal Rumble, and Imperium's feud with the New Day, but thankfully things settled down for the rest of the first half of the year, hovering just over 10% for this period, which includes that bad start to the year. These kinds of finishes picked up a little in mid-November 2024, with 3 out of 4 shows ending this way. Probably the worst of the lot was Tommaso Ciampa interfering in the Street Profits match with the Motor City Machine Guns. Sure, they were clearly turning heel soon where this would add to the story, but once again the Street Profits were on the end of some bad booking rather than getting the push they always deserve. The other two were very similar finishes in the Intercontinental title scene, as it was obvious we were heading towards a triple threat with Ludwig Kaiser and Sheamus challenging Bron Breakker for the title, which did end up being a banger. While the first 4 episodes in December were all clean finishes, the second half of December saw almost 25% of all matches end up in either a DQ or a no contest in the lead up to the end of the year, including Carmelo getting Braun Strowman counted out on the 20th of December episode of Smackdown, which made Braun look like a complete idiot. And then the very next show of Monday Night Raw saw 2 in a row when Judgment Day got involved in the Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio match. Why Dom couldn't just take a loss with the Judgment Day getting their heat back after the match, I have no idea. And then the Authors of Pain attacked the Wyatt Six during the Dexter Lumis and Miz match straight after. Considering the AOP were released not long after this, a finish of this kind was terrible, and the crowd rightly panned the booking. January looked like we were turning a corner back towards a much lower percentage, as only 8% of the matches on Raw or SmackDown ended in DQs or no contests. The worst of the lot saw Pretty Deadly and Los Garzas fighting all around the arena during the DIY and Motor City Machine Guns match on the first SmackDown of the year. This led to the two teams brawling into the ring and onto the competitors of the match, and the crowd thought this was awful. The commentators sold it like the tag division was out of control, but it just looked like they were taking a very easy way out of this match. But we also need to throw in that ridiculous DQ finish between Jacob Fatu and Braun Strowman, where Jacob just pushed the referee aside to finish the match. A really uncreative way to finish this, but at least that led to the awesome savage beatdown of Braun by Jacob that made him look like a killer. And then came along February 2025 with one of the worst months for a very long time, with an incredible 20% of all matches on Raw and SmackDown leading to a DQ, countout or no contest finish. And yes, we are including the 2 separate occasions where the advertised match didn't start because of a pre-match attack. The first Raw of the month actually started with a clever disqualification during the match between Liv Morgan and Io Sky, as Rhea Ripley came out to stop the interference of Raquel Rodriguez. While getting all fired up, she accidentally hit Liv Morgan right in front of the referee to cost Io Sky a shot at the Elimination Chamber. This led to the breakdown in the relationship between Rhea and Io and a wonderful championship match a month later. But a week after this was one of the worst DQ finishes I've ever seen, with the Creed brothers taking on the War Raiders in a championship match. As the War Raiders set up for the War Machine on Brutus Creed, Julius Creed came in and whacked Ivar with the belt for the DQ. It made absolutely no sense, especially as the incredibly athletic brothers celebrated with the belts afterwards and still got another title match, which they ended up losing as well. The next SmackDown on the 14th of February had another terrible DQ finish, as Tiffany Stratton had Nia Jax set up for the prettiest moonsault ever. Candice LeRae attacked from the outside. This is always one of my least favourite things to watch in wrestling because it doesn't protect anyone. The person laying on the mat is going to be losing the match anyway, so just have them pinned. A week later, and the worst SmackDown of the year saw Raquel and Liv attacking Bianca and Naomi prior to the match scheduled between Liv Morgan and Naomi, as they had their time cut by The Rock's promo. And straight after The Rock's weirdness with Cody Rhodes, the Street Profits beat up Pretty Deadly and DIY for a second no contest finish in a row in the worst SmackDown of the year so far. With 2 more shows left of the month, surely we can get away with no more DQ finishes, right? Right? Wrong. As Judgment Day tried to beat up Bron Breakker during his match with Dominic Mysterio on Raw. Again, why does Dom need to be protected in a non-title match? Bron Breakker has somehow still managed to stay incredibly over despite some terrible booking during his Intercontinental title reigns. And then the worst of them all, the final SmackDown of the month saw 3 matches ended up in a schmoz. Tiffany Stratton was the wrestler that would take on Chelsea Green in Toronto in a match that just didn't need to occur. With both women not needing a loss at this stage, the match just ended in a DQ as, you guessed it, Nia Jax attacked Tiffany Stratton. 2 matches later, and the advertised match between Los Garzas and Street Profits didn't even start, as DIY got revenge on their returning Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins by destroying both teams before the start of the match. This was the wrong kind of heat in the crowd, getting frustrated with the way the matches were being booked. And finally, Carmelo Hayes actually did a really good Eddie Guerrero impression with the fake chair shot to get the win over Braun Strowman, one that would have been awesome to see and perfect for his character if we didn't already get two bad finishes in the same night. While I don't think we will ever get back to the years of two matches interspersed with DQs, countouts and no contests all on the same shows, the WWE have definitely brought back the Schmoz finishes to their matches in a much bigger way than when the regime first took over. Some DQ finishes are good, like Rhea accidentally taking out Liv Morgan, while almost all of the rest are terrible and unnecessary. The WWE is hitting one of its highest peaks commercially, but it doesn't take much for the House of Cards to fall when its fans continuously get dissatisfied with the way matches are booked. What do you think about these kinds of finishes? Have you noticed them creeping back into the WWE more and more these days? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, you can help us out with two simple clicks. One of the like button and the other of the subscribe button to get more Aussie charm in your wrestling content. And most importantly of all, we hope that everyone watching here today has a wonderful day.